Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we have the privilege of talking to Jenney from New York. Jenney is a listener that reached out to me quite a while ago about some things that she has been experiencing over the years. And it's a privilege to finally be able to sit down with her and have a conversation. So Jenney, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeremiah. I'm really happy to be here today. So I guess, would you like me to just start with the main topic that I wrote into you about?
Yeah, absolutely.
With the rest area in Utah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I had some experiences before this incident, but how can I put it? They weren't visuals. They were, the usual weird, unexplainable stuff that can happen in the forest that you can kind of like chuckle about and be like, oh, was that a Bigfoot? But you can't really like say you saw it. So this is my first time I ever saw one. So a little bit of background is probably necessary here. So I was a wilderness guide for 8 years, a paid wilderness guide in like Utah, Oregon, Georgia, North Carolina, New York, pretty much all over the country. Before that, I was a guide in a different capacity for backcountry snowboarding. And then I loved nature and being outside, but I am also I'm a scientist. I love science, so I went to school to be a scientist. And so I was, at this point, deep into a biology degree, and I needed to do my field work for my internship. And my field work was environmental science focused, and I was also doing a deep dive study into cryptogamic soils in Utah and dinosaur bones and land issues, and kind of this intersection with land issues, wilderness, and science. And so this brought me out to this amazing place in Utah called Capitol Reef. And I was just learning all I could, and I was spending a lot of time alone alone really. Sometimes backpacking out and spending the night looking at fossils, or driving out in my little car, staying in the middle of nowhere. So a lot of alone time. And so when I had this experience, it was very weird that I hadn't seen a Sasquatch in one of these like completely remote places. This was by the side of a road in a rest area. So a little bit of this backstory is that my dog had passed about a year earlier, and I was really missing my big German Shepherd. And so when I was doing this field work outside Capitol Reef, I thought, well, I will see if there's any big German Shepherds that need rescued out of the shelter there in Richfield. And so I had found a shepherd that I was planning on transporting to Boulder, but because of this incident, I kept this dog, and this dog ended up being the main interaction with these Sasquatch beings into the future. So this is like day one with this dog. So I picked this dog out. I've been doing field work all summer. I'm in staying in Torrey, Utah, working in there, and then doing my field work. And so I'm able to squeeze in some time to drive out to Richfield and go pick up this dog. And so I get out there. This dog is, at death's door. She was going to be euthanized that morning. And I say this, I had just this mindset of like just love for this dog. And I didn't really know her yet. I just was saving a life. And so we were driving back from the shelter, and we were, I want to say, well, we were driving through the Fish Lake Mountains, and there's a rest area. I believe it's before you descend down into Bicknell. There's this rest area that's a gravel road. There's hunting campers there at this time of year. So this was last week in August, and it's like a little reservoir. These are all over Utah for flood control, and so it's surrounded by sagebrush, and there's aspen trees. What struck me when I pulled in is I could swear that I saw people fishing, or that I had a sense that people were there fishing. There's like these little pullouts all along the lake. And so I was looking for a place to wash this dog that had been in the shelter. And so I was looking for like a place away from everybody. And so I went to the end of the little dirt road. This, again, is right along the I say highway, but it's like a 2-lane main road through the Fish Lake Mountains. And we get out of the car, and we walk out to the lake, and it's cobble. So it's the end of the summer, so the water's really low. It's hard to walk, and this is significant later. But point is, I have a very clear view of the beach and the aspen trees and the campers, and I'm like making a mental note, like, oh, these are probably people out scoping for elk, or they're bow hunters. I can't remember if bow season had started, but I didn't feel alone. That's the point here. So I'm splashing water on this dog that, again, I barely know her, and she is terrified of the water. So it's clear that something had happened to her. And so in the middle of her freaking out with the water, me trying to wash her, she stiffens and starts growling like, scary growl. And not at me, but she's staring at the aspen trees that are along the beach. So she is, staring and growling. And my first thought is, oh, there's like a man approaching, or a hunter or something like that. So now my attention turns, and I see that there is a very weird man peeking out from behind the aspen trees, and it's several little aspen clusters from where my cobbled beach starts. So it's, can't see real clearly at this point, but my dog is fixated, and now her bark is like an alarm bark, or growl, like danger. And I didn't know this dog really well, but I know German Shepherds, and I knew that growl. So we start getting out of the water, and that quote-unquote man now moves very fast from one aspen tree to the next aspen tree closer to me. And he's like hunched. He's all gray. His hair is over his face. He's skin and bone. Like, he's got these really broad shoulders, but is very bony, and is his arms are weird. His hands are like down by his knees, and he's kind of like kind of shuffly, swoopy with his arms. Like, feet are shuffly, arms are a little bit swoopy, but he's not running like a regular person would, like with elbows up. His hands are down. And I heard I think somebody on this podcast say, just like a few episodes ago, that was almost cartoonish. Yeah, it was like, it reminded me of like one of that Bugs Bunny monster with the broad shoulders and the dragging arms. But my brain was like, that is a crazy man. That is a crazy man coming at me, trying to sneak up at me. So at this point, he's moved another tree forward, and now I can see that he's very tall, and he's behind an aspen tree, which is comically too small to hide him. So now I see these bony shoulders, big broad shoulders poking out on either side of the tree, and it's all in gray. And I'm like, why is that man gray, head to toe. That's not hunting camo. That's not a ghillie suit. He's just all gray. That's so weird. And also, like, I can see you. Like, you are doing a terrible job of hiding. They're like, this is a crazy person. So, and he's very big. So, like, a very big, creepy, crazy person who's hiding his face behind the tree. And so now I'm running for the car. The dog is, growling, like, danger, danger. And, but we're trying to run over those terrible cobbles, and it's all open between me and my car. Now, this crazy man is now moved another tree closer. Again, that crazy swoopy movement, and then now he's peeking out from behind the aspen tree, looking at me. And it took years to, like, process this. The hair was pulled over the face like Cousin It, and I was like, that is like Cousin It. That is so weird. So now I'm like, what is this weird tall man with no clothes but weird hair? He's got long hair and it's pulled over his face, and he's peeking at me from behind a tree, and he's still coming forward. And so I'm thinking about to get snatched by a crazy person. So by this time I'm in the car, dog's in the car, and while I got into the car, it moved to the closest tree it could to me. So now it's very close. Like not grabbed me out of my car close, but had I not run to my car, he would be between me and my car, or he could get between me and my car. So now I tear out of there, and as I'm pulling out, he leans out behind the tree. Like, I can see him looking at me from behind the tree. And again, I'm thinking, like, that is some kind of crazy man, like, trying to snatch me. And also in the back of my head, I'm like, why isn't anybody helping me? Like, with the hunters and the fishermen, like, why is nobody helping me? That was probably one of the freakiest things, was like, how did this thing sneak up on me? Like, how did that even happen? Where did it come from? The sagebrush is not very tall. Like, how'd that even happen? And so I get down to my work in Torrey, and like, besides, like, oh, I just got myself a stinky dog that just saved my life, there's a crazy man at the rest area by Bicknell. Like, I was talking to people, like, do you know about this? Like, do you know about this weird, skinny, tall man with the hair pulled over his face, and he's all in gray, and he walks really weird? And everybody looked at me like, what are you talking about? So that was like, I thought I was getting snatched. Now, I'm going to fast forward, like, years and years ahead, after having more experiences and seeing more of these beings. Of course, I heard somebody, I think it was on this podcast, talk about seeing one that looked like Cousin It. And when that person said that, I just, like, it all came into clarity. Like, oh my God, that Sasquatch pulled the hair over his face to, like, obscure his face so it wouldn't be as freaky, right? Because if I had seen, like, a Sasquatch peek out from behind a tree with the full face and the brows and everything, I would never have waited that long to get in the car. But instead, my brain was, like, trying to figure this obscured situation out.
What do you mean when you say getting snatched? What's your definition of that?
So at the time, I thought it was like a crazy person that was trying to, like, kill me, like, gonna try to grab me. And like stuff me into one of those campers, or make me disappear. Because there is a, I mean, I hate to say it, but there's like a, kidnapping corridor across Utah and Kansas, Colorado. And so, and I have had, like life experience of somebody trying to grab me before. So it was like one part like PTSD, and then the other part like there's a real threat here, feeling like there was a very real threat there that I was going to get grabbed. I wasn't thinking like grabbed and eaten, or I was just thinking more immediate, like whatever that is could grab me and stuff me in one of those campers.
Oh, absolutely. Wow. That would be horrifying. I'd be right there with you, especially if I couldn't see its face. I mean, something about that is very weird. So you can see anything.
It was so weird. No, I could see that there was bone structure, like, that there was eyes. The face was long and skinny. And when he moved, like lean, like, I wouldn't say lean, but like scooched his face from around the side of the tree, could see hair, like movement, right? So it was like not fabric. It was like a movement there. So it was like, why is that man have his hair pulled over his face? It was weird. Or like a hood, I was like, right. At first I saw it from a distance and I thought, it was like, why does that man have the hood over his head? It's summertime. It's hot. That didn't make sense. And then as he got closer, I could get more of a feel that this was weird. Something was really weird.
Were you able to see like a shape to the head at all, or was the hair just too much?
It was, the hair obscured the jawline, the neck, the like chin to shoulder aspect. Trying to think, it was just long and skinny. I'm trying to think of something like it. It was, I've seen people that were thin like this, and it's just like when somebody is very, very thin, and their cranium is kind of looks very narrowed, but it was long. Like it was the head was longer than a person's, like head, from top of the skull to the jaw, if that makes sense.
Did you ever do any research or anything to see if similar experiences had happened in that same area or anything?
That's such a good question. I never thought to. Weirdly, I never thought to. I was so out of touch with what it was. I had to leave in a couple days to go do my field work. And also I had to then go, after this finished up, I had to then go spend the next few days by myself in the wilderness with this dog. So I was very, very like disconnected from the danger. Like I had partitioned the danger away from me in my mind because I had to go finish my field work. And then I went on to years of living in the wilderness by myself. So it was like the reality of that possibility of what that could have been, it just couldn't sink in. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, feel free to, it sounds like this maybe connects to other things as well, or?
Yeah, so this happened, and then I went on to have a magic, just absolute magic with this dog. She was, my good luck charm. I made my dinosaur discovery a few years, or, I finished my field work with this dog, and we formed quite a connection. I had more experiences with these beings. My take on the situation changed. So while at the time I thought I was being snatched, in hindsight, I think that it looked weird and it moved weird because it was old. And I thought, oh, well, that makes sense because an old Sasquatch is going to have movement. It's going to move like a little rickety, a little stooped, and that made a little more sense. And then I thought maybe it was there to see this moment with me and this dog, because I'll get to the next story here, because this dog really had a thing with Sasquatch, and she's passed since, and I miss her, but a lot of weird stuff happened around this dog. So I think now in hindsight, this being wasn't there to snatch me, but was there to maybe witness. And also, I had a lot of fear at that time about being, having been by myself and had to feel defensive and protective. And this dog came from where that Sasquatch lived. So it's also possible that Sasquatch had been aware of my dog, because my dog was turned loose with the sheep in that area and then brought to the shelter. So I thought, I hadn't even kind of thought about this until years later. It was like, oh my gosh, maybe that Sasquatch was, more familiar with my dog. I don't know. It sounds kind of weird, but it was also a weird coincidence. So anyways, I finished school. I eventually moved out to the oil fields of Colorado, and I work on pipelines, and I hike pipelines. I do vegetation surveys and essentially environmental science kind of things for the oil companies and the gas companies out there. And I did have some bizarro experiences, but mostly of I'm taking a truck down a road, and then I just feel like I'm gonna die if I don't just stop and turn around. I did have this one experience where I went out to help close out a plug and abandon site that had been restored, and I went out there to take the final photos. So this was outside of Rangeley. It was, if you're from Rangeley, you're very familiar with the big ridge that goes all the way from kind of the Meeker area, follows the White River, and then heads over to Douglas Pass. And so I was working in up on that ridge that connects up with Douglas Pass, but way back in. And I was walking out, and I felt like something was hunting me, and the natural thought was mountain lion. And I had seen mountain lion tracks up there, had seen wolf track. So I just, took off my backpack, puffed up my backpack, put my backpack back on, got out my rock hammer, was like, if this thing comes at, I was ready. And I hike out, and looking over my shoulder, so many times, stopped and did the spin around, and nothing was there. And maybe 3 weeks later, the guy that's in charge of, that I report to, the oil company, he's like, I noticed you submitted a report for this site. He's like, I thought I told you not to go up to that site. And I was like, well, no, it was on the list to do. And he's like, huh? He goes, well, did you happen to see anything up there? The pumpers say they see some weird stuff up there. And it's like, well, funny you mentioned it. And I told him the story I just told you. And then he and my field boss kind of go white, and they have this moment of looking at each other. And then the oil company guy goes, I'm not going to have you go up there anymore. Nobody's going up there anymore. I was like, well, I'm sure it's just the mountain lion, just the mountain lion. He's like, nope, not going up there anymore. Nobody's going up there anymore. And I did find out from another story, later down the road, that there had been sightings down at my field boss's ranch, which was not far from that spot. But that whole field area burned to the ground some time ago. But anyways, that was kind of the only notable thing that had happened while I was out in Colorado that really stands out as being weird. So I finally moved to New York and built a life here. I moved here to get into genetics. Genetics was one of my first passions in biology, and genetics, microbiology, and so got a wonderful job here. Still have this dog, and then as you know, the pandemic hits, and I was at ground zero for figuring out how to deal with the pandemic. I had to conduct myself, accordingly. So it was, very isolating, but at the same time, my mom was having some health issues that were very serious, and I was very stressed out with my work situation. Then you had the financial implications, everybody's hours getting reduced, and then you have the world going quiet. And I thought, well, this is a good time to start meditating. And I need to back up a little bit. Before this, about maybe 2 month or two before the pandemic. Well, when I say before the pandemic hit, the pandemic, quote, hit for me at a different time than it did for the rest of the United States, because my work dealt with people in China. We were partnered in China. So when China was going through the pandemic, it was very much a part of our lives at my work, here in New York. And so for me, we're talking late fall, early winter. So I started going to this meditation group to help manage stress. This was right, before the pandemic, quote, quote, really hit.
Jenny.
And I, yeah.
Can we clarify? Someone in the future isn't going to get this, which is kind of cool to think someone in the future won't get this. But so for most of the world, it was March 2020 is how I view it. But you're saying that for your world, it was fall of 2019, correct?
Yeah, it was. Okay. And I could be a little fuzzy on that, but I remember I was guiding at House Caverns, and that was, I want to say it was January that I was hey, how come we're not wearing masks? And everyone's looking at me like I'm crazy.
Okay.
So, yeah, and we already had our food storage and our surgical masks stored up in January.
Wow.
Yeah, I already knew,
man.
Because I know. So I knew what was coming, and we were preparing for it at work, because we were partnered in China. And our mice were going all over the world. And just sidebar, I worked with the mice that were saved basically Trump's butt. That got him those monoclonal antibodies right away. So
oh my goodness, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
there's something for everyone in this one.
I know.
Oh, wow.
It's I mean, when I say I'm really into genetics, I love it. And so I, of course, from a mental point of view, I was loving that aspect of the pandemic. I got to, scratch every itch in the bioengineering world of things, but at the same time it was extremely stressful. So So there's the pandemic, right? And there's the lead up to it, but then work started being stressful right prior to this. And so this is what had led me to seek out a group of people that were like-minded and into just meditation and relaxation. And I'd always had an interest in hypnosis. The lady that ran the group was a hypnotist. And so I kind of fell into this community of people that were just really into mental wellness and anyway, I thought it was a meditation group. It was basically a group for psychics, for people to hone their abilities, learn about it, or even just experience and be a guinea pig. So I walked into this group I'll be your guinea pig. I'm here for the meditation. Stay for the occasional hey, your dead so-and-so's here visiting you. So you can kind of get that I was in this like mental mindset of meditating and hearing a lot of weird stuff, right? I like hearing weird stuff from other people. And this was just like a meeting a week here, a week there. And then, of course, as the pandemic started rolling up, you started hearing the people who are quote unquote psychics start talking about these big changes coming. So anyways, I think it's important to set the stage, because as a scientist, I'm trying to look at this from a like, look at all the facts, right? And part of the dynamic of these experiences I have was this mental shift at this time. And so anyways, where I'm going with this is that I want to say it was like November. It was like October or November. The leaves were down. And I lived, I don't mind sharing exactly where this is, because it's kind of mind-blowing if you want to Google it. At the time, I was living on Route 20 in East Greenbush, New York, which is the city. Like, it's not, it's suburb, but, I can see the Albany skyline, right down the street. And I lived in an old house from the 1800s. A lot of the houses in that area were older houses along the old rail line. And there was this apartment complex called Greenbush Station, and it's known for being a little bit trashy. Like, the dumpsters are always overflowing. But other than that, though, it's a very respectable place to live in an otherwise, like, semi-unaffordable area. The point is there's trees, there's bike trails, there's woods, but it's also, there's traffic, and there's stores, and there's commerce. So I had to be report at work very early, so I was out walking this dog that I was telling you before, Kiva. I was out walking her at 11 o'clock at night. And we were, 2 houses down from my house, and we were in front of Greenbush Station. They have this big lawn, and my dog starts fixating on something that's walking down, like, the lawn at Greenbush Station. There's like this little strip of trees, walked under the lamp light, the street light. And so she's fixed at it, but she has got the weirdest look on her face. I'd never seen this look on the dog's face before. She was trying to figure out what she was looking at. She was, like, chuffing. She was going like, huh, 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 like that, and staring, but her hackles weren't up. She wasn't alerting to something dangerous. It was like, there's something there, I don't know what it is. And so because she was fixating on it, I began to fixate on it. And there was something there. There was an outline. It was big. It was huge. It was a distortion of the air, best way to put it. And it crossed the street. And when it crossed the street, this was it 4 lanes at this point, and it across the street to rows of houses, right? So there's these, like, old, craftsman houses that line the street, and there's big trees, like oak trees, and these very old trees. And so I remember thinking, it's going to, like, whatever that is going to hide behind the tree. And so the thing is as soon as it got across the street, there was another, like, the light from the street lamp was now not coming down on it, but coming at it from its side. And immediately a shadow showed up against the white house that it was standing in front of. Now, it was walking thinking, this is the weirdest thing. It was walking with a posture that suggested that it believed I could not see it. Like just walking across the street. And then and I saw that so then I saw that shadow against the house, and it's walking down, like walking, I wouldn't say on the sidewalk, but like toward that tree that's on the sidewalk area, or yeah, in front of the house. And then there was this moment when its shadow was cast against the house very clearly. I must have drawn in a breath or something. Something about my body language changed. Its head went up to the eaves of the house. It realized that I could see it. And this is the goofiest thing. It made this like, oh shoot posture, like it stiffened, and it's like this oh shoot, like the best description I have is like when I was like when I was about 8 years old, my grandfather was changing in my parents' room, and I came up the stairs real fast, and he like scooted behind the door real fast. You know, he had that same like, oh shoot, I don't want her to see me kind of look. This Sasquatch had the same kind of like, oh shoot, and like his shoulders kind of came up and stiffened, and he like scuttled behind this tree. But he was so big, and the shadow was cast against the house was so obvious that he then like scurried across the front of the house, and I could see the shadow, and I could see that there was like an outline, like there was light that could not pass through something, and I could see the detail was spectacular. And he then turned left and went in between two houses where there were some bushes. And I, in the moment, I mean, also my dog's following this, right? My dog's head is following mine. And I thought in that split second, I thought I just saw, was that a demon? Like, did I just see a demon? That was clearly a shadow being, but that was not what I imagined a shadow being to be, but it was such a distinct shadow, and there was definitely something solid there. And I ran home. I probably jogged, and I got home, and I immediately said prayers that whatever that was does not, cannot, come to my home. My house is just the next house over, like 2 houses over. So I also thought, like, okay, I've been going to this group and talking with these people that see things, and I thought, am I going crazy? No, the dog saw it. Was that a spirit? No, it was solid. It was solid. Like, it was solid, like, when a car drives by, the light cannot pass through the car, and you can still get a gist of what kind of car it is. Like, it was so clear. And I'll give you details in a minute. And anyway, so that happened, and I prayed, and I also just didn't know what it was. So anyway, I hadn't been, and I didn't listen to Bigfoot podcasts or anything like that. So this was really bizarre thing.
So you weren't, or you were?
I was not. Like, I was not.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. So I will say about a week before, I did forget about this, about a week before, I had been in my meditation group, and I had, we had to do this like box image, this box visualization. And when the box opened, the head of the face of a Sasquatch was right in front of mine. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I thought, oh, I must be like going for a hike soon. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. So like, and I told the other group members, like, oh, well, I just saw a Sasquatch face. And I thought that was just not weird. I didn't think that was weird. I thought it was kind of like kooky and funny, like, oh, funny, Harry and the Hendersons. I love Oregon. Maybe I'm taking a trip to Oregon soon. Or I don't know. I hadn't thought too deeply about it. when this happened, I wasn't thinking Sasquatch. My first thought was like something from the spirit realm. And then I got home and I really thought about it, and I was like, wait a minute, that was solid. I had never heard the podcast that talk about the predator. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of a trip down the woo here eventually, because I did seek out answers from all different kinds of places. So anyways, my first thought was something from the spirit realm, say a prayer. Maybe I need to lay off the meditations. Like maybe this has just gotten,
That's
too
funny. Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
Right. Also, I was at this point doing Wim Hof breathing, Wim Hof breath work, and I was trying to manage my own stress. And so I thought, oh my gosh, like meditate, because I know meditations can cause like certain neurotransmitters to be released in the brain. So I thought, I went down this road, right? Like, is it me? Is it the meditation? Is it the neurotransmitters? All right. So that thing happened. It was about 2 nights later. I'm in my apartment, and my apartment is on the 2nd floor. But behind my apartment, the ground is like a hillside, right? So it comes up closer to one of my back windows, and I had my windows open, and I'm sitting on the bed. I don't think I was meditating, but I was like relaxing before bed. And my dog was in the room with me, and she starts growling at the window opposite me, and then her nose and her growling follows the wall as if it was the craziest thing. It's like she could see or smell something through the wall, and she followed the wall and then made the corner, came toward that. Now she's following the wall, and she's walking toward me, toward that open window, with her nose to the wall, growling. And I hear what sounds like a very large man walking along the house and stopping right under my bedroom window. And I hear the leaves crunch. There's these like little sticks. There's a little bit of like glass and garbage there. So my first thought was bear, right? Like there must be a bear. I look out, I have a flashlight. I shine it out my window, but I'm also a little bit scared to like stick my head out the window and look around at all angles. So I just figure, well, I don't see a bear. I don't hear a bear. I don't smell a bear. I grew up around yard bears in Connecticut, and there was no more stompy sound. So I settled back on my bed, and then I hear the shift of weight, like from one foot to another under the window. And now I'm like, what the heck? Like, that is big. It's bipedal. It's under my bedroom window, and I don't see anything. But I'm too scared to like, I don't know, be within grabbing distance. So I think I closed the window at that point, and was creeped out. But I was like, all right, well, lightning strikes once. I hadn't quite connected it to the weird thing I seen the other day, a couple days before this. So then another few days go by, and the same thing happens again, right to my bedroom window. This time I had some time to mentally prepare, and I had my big mag light, and I shined the light all around the outside, and I didn't see anything. And yet when I turned the light off, went back and, put my head back in the room, they had these screens that slid up and down, like really old school. I heard the footsteps walk away. It's like, what the heck? Okay. So that was weird. And now I did start listening to podcasts. It was about a month later. At this point, I should probably describe to you what I saw on the house.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what I saw, its head went to the bottom of the roof eaves. And at the time, and this is what I'm realizing, this is the magic of these beings and also our brains. Our brains cannot fully wrap our head around their size. Like, it's the perspective and the distortion. They seem to understand this. I knew it was big. I did not understand it was 10, like how giant big, like maybe 10 feet tall. It was until about 6 months later, I saw somebody walking on that same sidewalk at that same time of night. It was just like some guy walking home, and he was so small. His shadow was so small compared to what I saw. Like not even close. And I was like, oh my God, what I saw was enormous. The hands went below the knees. It was so muscular. I could make out the definition in like that lump of calf muscle in the shadow. Its knees were really narrow. Like the joints were so much smaller than the bulk of the muscle. His thighs were so thick and strong. The small waist. The shoulders were big and broad, but the arms are what freaked me out. It was the arms and the hands that jumped in my head and was like demon, because the fingers were so long, and they were not draggy, but like not limp, but like hanging toward the ground. And when he ran, his elbows, or not ran, but like scuttled, his elbows were bent, but his wrists were like, his elbows were slightly bent, but his wrists were distinctively like hanging. And you know how they say like hands like catcher's mitts? The hands were so big. He was leaning forward. His head was hard to tell the shape with the shadow, but rounded. And like you hear, no neck. Like there was not like any discernible neck in the shadow. But you could see in the body language that like stiffened and then like hustled and he did like a little like, little jump, like a little, what do you call it? You know, when you kind of stiffen up, jump, and startle. That's the word I'm looking for. Like did a little jumpy startle. It was so big. And okay, so obviously now there's been a few things in this time frame. Now the world is deeper into the situation.
Right.
And there's no more meditation group. The meditation group was shut down like, oh gosh. I mean, I think it was me that told them, like, hey guys, this is serious. Like, you know, because the group I was in, you have your like anti-bonos, like, no guys, like seriously, like this is really a thing. This thing in China, it's coming here. And so now the world's gone quiet, and I've decided that I want to buy a home or property, and I find this amazing property that I'm in love with just down the road. I'm going to describe it to people because they want to Google it. It's on Maple Avenue. It's in Skodak, and it's there's a big hunting preserve, and there's this old power line route that was going from Maple Avenue to Ann Lane, and now it's a big hunting area, and I wanted to buy that parcel, that 4-acre parcel. And so I went out there and I was taking pictures, and so my dog is in the car parked out on Maple Lane, and I'm with my phone in hand taking photos of the vegetation and the springs on this parcel of land. And again, we're talking mindset. My mind was so full of love for this property and the possibilities and the plants there and the old tree forts that the prior owners' kids had there. I was just in this state of just I was blissed out. I was in my element looking at the plants, and I look up, and leaning out from behind a tree was, the best description would be Harry and the Hendersons, Harry from Harry and the Hendersons. Red like like orangutan, but maybe a little darker. And he leaned out from behind a tree and like made sure I saw him, and then kind of like leaned back behind the tree. And what went through my head in that moment was, you are magnificent. It was such awe and joy, and I laughed of just absolute joy. I don't know if it was relief that like that thing that I had seen wasn't a demon, that the footsteps outside my window were a stalker. It was just like the relief and the joy and the like, they're real. There's one right there in front of me. And it was about, I'm going to say about 40 feet away. And I was holding a phone on camera in my hand, and it never crossed my mind to take a photo. Like, didn't even cross my mind. I did go back into the photos that I'd taken of the property, like hoping there was like a little peek behind a tree or something, and I didn't see anything. So that experience opened the floodgates. So to this day, when I've gone to zoos obviously since, and I see an orangutan, I have just this visceral reaction, it was so much like an orangutan, and the color and the hair texture, the length of the arms, that kind of flat expression where you like can't really tell what they're thinking, the kind of fleshy eyebrow, but this was like the conical head. It was, well, and I will tell you, I cannot say it was the one that was seen under the street light, but that just seems like a logical conclusion. And I'm going to jump ahead now, and there's many more stories, but to kind of stick with this individual, obviously when I saw one in the flesh like that, it was, paradigm changing. Like I'm a scientist, I'm a biologist, a field biologist, geneticist. Now I'm like, where did those genes come from? Which family lineage? What does it eat? Why is it here? It's here. Why isn't it discovered? So then I started going down the rabbit hole of with the podcast and such. So anyways, so jumping forward, you obviously, or I would obviously think like, that was just unbelievable. Like, did that really happen? How could that have happened? Now, I had other experiences in the years to come, but over that time, every now and then I would get a little blip of mind speak, which I believe is from this being, and it did not feel directed at me. It felt directed at my dog. And so here's a good example of this, of an interaction with my dog. Another time, this was after I saw this being, it was maybe another week or so later. I realize I'm jumping around. It's like all the memories just come like zhuzhing forward. I'm walking my dog along Route 20 right in front of Greenbush Station. It's about 5 a.m. Now, at this point, I want to say it's whatever it is, like a beautiful morning. And I was walking with my eyes closed because I could do that with this German Shepherd I had, and I was just kind of meandering on the sidewalk, enjoying the breeze and the amazing day. And I opened my eyes for a moment because I know I'm approaching Greenbush Station, the little place you cross. And I look down and I see a can, a crushed Mountain Dew can. It's crushed. It's sitting on the sidewalk. And it's sitting on the sidewalk at the edge of the driveway into Greenbush Station. And I thought, oh, I need to pick that up on my way back. And my dog, all of this, and then I closed my eyes again. And my dog kind of pulls on the leash a little bit. I could feel her pull on the leash. And that can sounds like it gets kicked, punted, kicked, like by a kid kicking it. And it gets kicked, scoots along the pavement, uphill, uphill toward Greenbush Station, right past me and my dog. And I just like, what the heck just happened? And so I opened my eyes, and I'm not thinking like something paranormal happened. I'm thinking somebody just snuck up, a person just saw me with my eyes closed at 5 a.m. on a city street and snuck up behind me. And my dog pulling might have been her like lunging at them. But when I opened my eyes, now the can is up the little hill drive, and my dog is got her tongue out, happy, like, oh, let's play, at something that I cannot see that's like between the dog and the Mountain Dew can. And gosh, it was probably like another like 2 weeks later when I really started just being like, well, let's just see how far this paranormal situation is going to go. I got an extended leash, and I would go out to Greenbush Station on that green lawn at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night when I was letting her out, and she would play with something that I couldn't see. Like play like, I don't know if you've ever seen a person hold a stick, and like the dog like kind of jumps up to grab the stick and lands, and jumps up and grabs the stick to land and bows. Like she would play bow at something in front of her at the end of the leash. And I would just be like, oh, okay, like this is happening right now, but it's not menacing. And, I don't know. I just went with it. So, so then it was like another period of time. So like clearly something's interacting with my dog. And so there's another period of time I'm driving on the main highway. I think it's 90, and I'm heading up to Miller Road, and I feel this. This was like one of the early times of mind speak. Is I felt this crushing sadness, crushing. It was like when somebody dies, when you feel like the absence of something. And I just started crying. I was like, oh, that came out of blue. And then I heard in my head, I'm going to miss you. And my dog died. I saw this being one more time, and my dog died about a week after that. And so it was kind of, I didn't feel like that was meant for me. I felt like I had kind of like intercepted an interaction, if that makes any sense. Anyway, so I'll share the last time I saw this being. It was an unusual situation, but first I need to get to the woo part, because I think that this will be a clue for us as a community to help get some answers. When I say I was at the end of my rope, I mean, obviously between COVID and work stress and meditation and shutdown and not being able to see my parents because of their health issues, and my sequestration for work, I was like, I need to check on my own mental health, and just to make sure I'm not imagining this situation. And one of the people in that meditation group that I met was this man named David Lewis, and I say was because he passed. Oh gosh, I think it's been about 2 years now. But he used to go to this group, and he used to do. He was an animal communicator, and that sounds crazy, right? But when he met me, he described a different German Shepherd I had had, like to a T. And then I showed him a picture of my Kiva, and he described her personality and her quirks and her weirdness and the abusive situation she had before me, described that to a T. So when she got sick, or she was, wait, let me back up. Was she sick at this? No, she wasn't sick at this time. When I had started having these experiences and really wanted to understand them better, because there were some other things that happened as well outside of my neighborhood, I called David Lewis and I said, I'm not looking for any kind of like reading for me. I want you to tell me what my dog saw that night as I was walking at night. And here's what he described. He said, he goes, "Oh my God, that's a Sasquatch." I was like, can you describe it? He described what I told you about the body shape and the size. And he said, and I asked him, I said, "Have you ever seen any of this through an animal before?" And he goes, "No, this is a first for me. This is something new." And I was like, "Well, I don't understand, like, I need more detail." So what he said is that it looked see-through but not see-through, almost misty, that it was solid, but yet my dog could almost like see through it. So there was something about it that was picking up from the environment around it, that it was not aware. It truly was like walking across the street as if neither me nor the dog could really see it. And then when the dog growled, it kind of got its attention, or like huffed and looked at it. It kind of got his attention. It still was walking across the street as if I couldn't see it, and then it could tell that I could see it, and then it ran behind the house. But it was this like solid but not solid nature is really kind of what was blowing my mind there. So again, I apologize for jumping around. So that gave me some clues. I was like, well, am I dealing with a earthbound being, a spirit of a caveman, a Sasquatch? Like, what are we dealing with here? And David's take was that it was something that was earthbound and could be a spirit at this point, or transitioning, like something that maybe lives way longer than we can wrap our heads around. And we talked a little bit about it, but ultimately he's like, I don't know. I can just tell you what I see through the dog's eyes. And then also he confirmed that yes, it was playing with my dog, and that it was friends with my dog. And so here's where I fast forward. So that was like 2019, 2020. I bought a piece of property on the west side of the Hudson River. It's the property I'm sitting on right now. And immediately, like day one, I got hit with a walnut skimming across my head. And I'll tell you about that in a minute if there's time. But I'm on a property where I just had another interaction with them a couple days ago. I hear them. I've heard a female. They're my neighbors. That's kind of how I get through. That's how I walk out my door in the middle of the night. Is I just like, they're my neighbors. They live on their land. I live on my land. But the point is immediately the interaction started happening with my dog. And again, it was like the line with the dog. When I started clearing the land here, and things were happening with the tree pushes, and the tree pushes were getting really scary, and I didn't know what that intent was, and my dog was trying to protect me from something in the bushes. I called David Lewis again, and I think this was the last time I spoke with him, and then he died. I can't remember how many months later, but he died like shortly thereafter. But he said that he could see that yes, they were Sasquatches. Again, he was amazed. He's like, this is not something I usually see, because I asked him, I was like, well, now that you know that this is a thing, have you seen them with other animals? And he said, just with my pets, and like my cat, and my cat at my parents' house, stuff like that. So anyways, so here's what he said the dog sees. My dog Kiva said that they move like cats, that they're very, what's the word he said? Very shy. He said they're very shy. They move very fast. They move like cats. They don't like it when I build a fire, because at that time I was building a fire and burning brush. They don't like it. That makes them very nervous, and they come around and they get very close, and they're just making sure I don't start I don't think he said forest fire, but whatever that was the gist. Don't start a fire. But they're very curious, that they like that I'm here, and they like Kiva, but Kiva gets nervous because they get very close to me. And I can't, I'm not aware of them being that close to me. And then I never got to talk with David after, when even more activity happened, because that was very early on to the property. But my point of sharing this is that I think animal communicators are a tool that we can use. And I know that sounds really out there, but I do think that there is a scientific explanation for much of the paranormal reports that we have about what Sasquatch does. And so for this, I'll submit this anecdote is I carry some autistic traits, and most of, I manage them pretty well. I'm blessed to be very good at science and whatnot. But I do need to manage my nervous system, and I was that kid that I would sleep outside even as a teenager because I'd get overwhelmed with stimulus. So living out in the wilderness was my jam, and loved it. And so that's one of the reasons why meditation works so good. I got damage in my eyes and shingles, and I started doing these meditations to focus on healing my eyes, because I would get these terrible, terrible headaches. And during that time period, I was doing those meditations. I would sometimes wake up. It didn't happen all the time. I'd wake up in the morning and sit up in bed with my eyes still closed, and I would see the bird song as squiggle lines. I would see sound. And it happens occasionally. It just happened to me a couple days ago. It looks like the Daredevil, like that show Daredevil, where you see like an image come out of the darkness, and that it fades away. And that is, I experience this sometimes. There's also a group of people, if I suddenly went blind, I could go to a camp where there's actually people on this planet that use a sonar, smack sticks together, make clicks with their tongue. Their brain can interpret sound as image. And this is something humans can do. And I think, this is a thought, I think that we should be as a community, enlisting people with these abilities to help us better interpret sound data. And I think that this is what some of mind speak is. I think that we have some innate abilities as human beings that we just aren't in touch with, but these beings, because they live in this natural environment, are. And every now and then, my brain kind of intersects with this concept. I forget what kind of sent me down this road, but I have had some experiences over the coming years, so which accompany some of these sightings. I feel like I'm getting a little off track here, but
no,
the point is,
I'm sorry. I just had a thought and I don't want to lose it.
yeah.
Do you think being around these creatures unlocks then a certain skill or part of the brain?
Oh, I'm glad you asked this question. When I have experiences with them that are like where I'll get like an image or a sound, I am usually in a very relaxed state. So honestly, I think it's about unplugging and relaxing and being in a state that is just more conducive to allowing the messages to come. So did that answer your question?
So you're talking about a state like you're just about ready to go to sleep, or maybe you're driving down the road and it's a very like boring stretch of road.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Or like I'm walking
just
hypothetically into the woods. Yeah, I would say it's like my attention is on something more simple than worrying about my bills and the work stress or solving a work problem. It's just more, the brain is in just that more in a moment, like you're just in the moment and not worried about what's happening, tomorrow at work and what am I going to wear, what am I going to pack for lunch, how am I going to solve that work problem. And yeah, there's some about the brain state, although I have had experiences where I was kind of like going about my business. So again, this is like really jumping ahead, but it's usually not in a state of like anger, frustration, stress. These happier episodes, I would say, are in a more meditative state. And so I think, this is just hypothesis, that being in those states allows our body to utilize biological mechanisms that we don't typically access. And some people, like people with aspects of autism or neurodivergence, or even just, what might be called a gift, is that they're just able to access that more readily. Their neurons are more have established pathways to better interpret that environmental stimulus. And I think that this accounts for a lot of experiences. And like I said, I think this is something that the community can enlist. And as a scientist, I focus on the testability and repeatability of experiences. I think that is why, I think that's why researchers do research. But as far as like the woo aspect and the high strangeness, if the high strangeness is repeatable, well, we really got to take a look at that as a possible data point. If it's repeatable, so like here's repeatable. Repeatable is I come out to my property, and this is when I was clearing the land, and I'm like, every night I pack up my car and I haven't tossed a Snickers up into the woods, a tree falls at the edge of my property. Several experiences down the line, I started gifting, and what I gifted was little mini Snickers And so I would come out to my property and not wanting, because I was getting tree pushes and scary things. So I thought, well, maybe if I gave them treats, they would stop scaring me. So I would toss Snickers up into this area, which was where I first got zinged with a walnut from. I thought, okay, well, he stands up there, or it stands up there, so I know that he can access us. So I toss up a Snickers bar. Well, over time, I just forget to leave a Snickers, you know what I mean? Like I get out to the property, I start my fire, I get working, and then I start packing up the car to go home, and a tree falls. There's a tree push, and it's always like at the edge of my property boundary. And so then I started saying, like, okay, I promise I won't forget. And then sometimes I would forget, and I would be like packing up the car, and now I'm about to get in the car and turn the key, and there's a tree push. Like, hey, you forgot your thing. You forgot the thing.
How many times has a tree push happened in that way?
God, so many times. So I used to come out like every weekday, like Friday night, Saturday night, and so it would be every time. So when I came out here, it happened the first time I came out to the property with the dog. So when the dog my dog was dying, and I thought it was the end, and I didn't want her to die without setting foot on the property, but my closing was in a few days. So I brought her out here one Sunday night, and I, put her on the leash, got out of the car, and said, like, at this point I've had experiences other places, but I hadn't had an experience at this place. And I said, hey, I yelled out to the forest. I was like, hey, I don't know if you're here, but I have this dog. She's very sick. She can see you. I can't, but she can see you. Please don't hurt her. Like, she's very sick. I just have her here to see the property. Maybe we'll be back. Maybe we won't. But, we're not here to cause any problems. But this is where my home's going to be, but please, please, please don't hurt her. Finish those, like, the sentence is just done out of my lips, and about 200 feet away, a big tree goes across the road so that I can't drive down the rest of the road. And I thought, oh, that was weird. But I had never experienced the tree push before. So it was just one thing. It was like, oh, that was weird, like right at the end of that sentence. But then like every time I came out after that. In fact, this one, I'll tell you this is great. This is a great story. So I bought the property, and there's a lot of dead trees here. The trees that were falling were not on the property where I was building the house and cutting the trees. They were around the edges of the property, as if something couldn't step foot on the property, but it was knocking trees over all around the edge. And so I came out here to cut trees. I brought my chainsaw, and there's this big cottonwood tree, and there's this huge cottonwood limb. And you know about cottonwoods, they shed the logs or the branches. And I thought, oh gosh, that branch has got to be the first thing that comes down after we get the other trees. And so I said that. I said it out loud, like I was talking, just talking to myself. And then I went to my car. I had to go, I think, grab a bucket of water from the Hudson, come back. I literally took one step onto the property, and it crashes to the ground. And I thought, I must have this weird sixth sense about trees about to fall. But then this kept happening, like, over and over. My dad and I were standing there with our chainsaws, and there was this tree that was about 6 inches wide. It was like 3 feet away. My dad says, "Oh, Jenney, do you want that tree down?" And I was like, well, let's leave it there. I'll leave. That's future firewood. Like that'll still be up there for a few years. That's future firewood. Turn my back, it falls it falls right over. It's just like weird stuff like that would happen. So another when I first got the property, I pulled up and was like, oh my God, there's so many trees that have to come down. And so I said out loud, I said, okay guys, like if you want me to live here, I'm gonna need some help with these trees. If you want me to live here, I need some help with these trees. Haha, like kind of chuckly, like haha. The next day I came out with my dad. I was meeting my dad out there with the chainsaws. Every tree that was dead and dying, where the house footprint was down. And it wasn't just they were on the ground. They had all fallen, in some cases against the natural gravity, crisscrossed in the exact perfect formation that my dad and I needed it to cut those trees down with the chainsaw safely, every one of them. And so when my dad pulled up on the property, he goes, oh my God, I hadn't told him the request to the forest people. He pulls up, he goes, oh my gosh, they're all perfect. They've all fallen perfect, all of them. I said, Dad, those all fell this week.
Okay, so that's wild. When they fell, did they make shapes on the ground?
I don't know. This is
because you said crisscrossed, right?
Yeah, but they were crisscrossed, like in the air. So when you cut them with the chainsaw, right? So like you want to cut them standing. That's what was so wild is nothing was laying on the ground. Everything was crisscrossed so that you could come in with the chainsaw and zing them off and cut them in sections safely.
Okay.
Just like how Dad and I would have done it if it was us.
So
it's so crazy. I've never seen a tree structure.
Oh, wow.
Never seen one. So weird.
So were the trees like broken off at a certain height, or like they were not cut? They were broken off. It sounds like
the whole tree was down, including the root ball.
Oh, really?
Yeah, these are trees like, big trees. There were some that were broken, but they were smaller. They were smaller, like Dad and I could have broke them if we had come along. We pulled it down hard enough.
Were any?
It wasn't necessary.
Sorry, were any broken off and upside down, or like were any nothing weird like that?
No.
Okay.
It was more about what are the odds that every tree we needed to come down came down in like 3 to 4 days.
That's incredible.
With no storms. Yep. There were no storms, no winds. It was just like a normal August day, like today. So
I don't know.
It was.
Wow.
I know. And since we're on the topic of this property, I realized I kind of jumped away from the East Greenbush guy, but I'll just back up a bit. Is the day I came out, there was the day I came out with the dog that was sick, and then there was the closing, and then I came out a few days later to do the very first work on the property, like snipping and clipping and taking video. So I go over, I'm just using the weed whip. My dog is in the car, and she is staying. So I come up to the car, which is along the roadside, and she's got her favorite window. She's in her non-favorite window. Her body is out this window as far as it can go, and she is standing on an axe, a weed whip, like bladed things, like things a dog doesn't stand on. She's very intent on sticking her head out this window, and she's staring at the the brushy sumac-y, when they trim the side of the road, you get like weedy species, brushy species coming up, and there's power lines. And she's staring, and I walk around the back of the car. I'm like, huh, that's weird. Why are you out that window? What are you staring at? Not thinking Sasquatch, none of that. Just like, wonder what caught your eye. And she's staring at it, and I walk to the front of the car to fold up a tarp. So random. Fold up a tarp, and I feel across the top of my head, like it kind of feels like a golf ball, like as if a golf ball skimmed across those little baby hairs sticking out the top of your head. So it didn't hurt me, but I could feel it skim, and it's coming across my head, the top of the head. It hits a walnut tree in front of me, but in front of that walnut tree in front of me is just a tree of heaven. They're like, 6 inches. And so it hits the bigger tree, hits the smaller tree, hits the bigger tree, hits the smaller tree, like a pinball. Bing, 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 bing. And it rolls to my feet. And I look down thinking it's like a golf ball, and some kid is side-armed a golf ball at me from across the road, because that's the sound, the feeling, and it's a walnut. And I pick up the walnut, and I sent a picture on one of our email exchanges. It's the most beautiful walnut you've ever seen. It's not cut. It's obviously chewed on 2 sides so that both sides are symmetrical. It's got a pattern to it. I'd never seen anything like it. And I pick it up and I just start laughing. And then I turn around because I thought somebody's throwing something at me, and I see Kiva staring at the woods, not growling, just doing that thing. And I'm like, and I waved. I was like, oh, I guess you guys are here. And I tossed, I was like, well, what can I throw back? I found like a little peppermint I had from Sonic in my glove box, and tossed it up into the woods. And it was something bizarre like that happened almost every time I've been out here. I came out here to clear the land. There were the tree pushes, and the tree pushes were getting scary. So late summer, I said, hey guys, like, you're scaring me. And when I speak to them, it sounds kind of crazy. It's like I speak with my heart, like imagine almost like a mouth coming from my heart. So I'm like projecting my thoughts, and I'm speaking, and I say, hey, I'm sorry, but I have my biology kind of takes over, and I get these scared feelings, and I freeze up when you push the trees over. But I know you want to tell me you're here, and I know you want to remind me to leave you treats, but can you leave, or can you make the sound of an owl, but make it sound fake so I know it's you? And it was like maybe two trips out after that, I'm at my property, and I hear, it sounded just like 2 men down in the woods, but big men, and they went, hoo, 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 hoo. like the worst barred owl imitation you ever heard.
You said that out loud, right?
Yeah, I said it out loud. And so now I was like, are there homeless people like down in the woods? And then, so there was hoo, 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 and then another one that was further down the road, and it goes hoo, 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 hoo. I was like, oh, all right. And there hasn't been a tree push since. Not a single tree push since. And a whole other summer passed. We haven't had any tree falls. So it's like the totality of the circumstances. If trees kept falling here I've lived here now all this time. Yes, we have had trees come down in storms, but the trees that were coming down was like, calm, quiet night. And weirdly, when I'm putting tools in the car, at the end of the summer, so I suspected that maybe they would be leaving at the end of that first summer. I suspected they might leave in the fall. Again, biologists looking around, seeing the edible plants go by the wayside, knowing that the apple season was through. I was okay. Oh, sorry. I'm just set the stage here. I mentioned a few things earlier in the discussion, like I did field work and I looked for fossils, and so fossil hunting is like my little fun hobby that I do, and I travel. I'll go all over the country to do a fossil dig. And when I was in college, there were some very specific fossils that I studied because they were indicator fossils. So this place that I built my house, it is on the kind of limestone that I studied in college, which was kind of neat, kind of things coming around full circle. I'm also a caver. It's cave-forming limestone. So I should mention that I live along power lines, on cave-forming limestone, at the confluence of two big rivers, with a cemetery across the street. Like, it is just kind of funny that I wasn't like a Bigfooter, and then this kind of happened. But anyways, so I'm into fossils. So it's the end of the summer, and I'm thinking, I wonder how they're going to let me know that they're not here, because I'm tossing apples and things like this up into the woods, but I don't want to waste food, and I definitely don't want to encourage, wildlife coming, a bear or something like that coming to me while I'm here burning brush all winter. And so I'm down, I'm building a drainage ditch, and I'm setting up, it's something called riprap, so I'm setting up these like rock dams and things like that to control the water. And there's a clear deer path that goes down to this creek that I'm manipulating, and it's a deer path, right? It's worn down, and I bent over placing rocks. I stand up. I'm like, okay, done for the day. Walk up the deer path, and in the middle of the path is this big rock about maybe like wider than a basketball. It's thick. It's a thick limestone hunk, but it's got all the layers and the stratigraphy in it, which is very different from the rock on my property. And I know this because I'm into fossils and I am looking at every rock. So from their perspective, they see me bending over, picking up rocks and looking at them all day long because I'm looking for fossils. But when I get this rock, and I saw it from a distance, it like jumped out at me immediately. I was like, oh my God, where'd that come from? Having that freaky moment when like something appears in the trail and you don't know how it got there, and it's just been like minutes since you were facing that direction. And I approach it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a good one. That's a good one with fossils in it. And I'm examining it, and I look a little closely, and it's got these very specific indicator fossils that I studied in college. Oh, like I drew a picture in college of this, and that picture is now like, that's exactly what this rock looked like. I was like, oh my God, it's They took a snapshot of my brain, went and found that rock. Like, I knew where that rock came from. It came from up on Thatcher, because that's where I studied those rocks in college. I was like, that does not come from here. That came from up at Thatcher. And then I remembered that about maybe like a week earlier, there was a smaller version of this that was in the middle of the trail, and I didn't look very closely at it. I set it aside. I was like, it was like getting dark or something. I was like, oh, that could be a good fossil rock. That looks out of place. That's weird. And I picked it up and I set it aside, and I didn't look harder. So it was almost like they were like, here, and I'm like, hey, dummy. you didn't look hard enough at the little one. So here's a really big one that you literally have to step over. And that just blew my mind. And then I didn't have any, then it was all quiet here until, there was an incident before this rock thing in the trail, but yeah, it was all quiet here the next year. So it was almost like a parting gift, like we're not gonna interact. I don't know. I don't want to put anything on it, but it just seemed significant. But back to the owl thing. Before the end of the summer, I had a very large fire pit. I had the area cleared all around for probably about 15 feet all around my fire pit, and it was grassy. Then there'd been all these weird things happening, and like my dog like trying to push me away from the brush and things like that. So I cleared out brush from on the fire pit because it was getting creepy. And I had made this habit of when the coals died down, I would just fan the coals and let it go down to ash and just enjoy the quiet of the night and look up at the stars. So it was in that moment, I'm standing at the edge of the fire pit. I think I was leaning on my shovel or a rake or something. And this was after the request to sound like an owl. Something went like this in my face. It went, "Hoo!" like that, right in my face. And it had a sound distortion to it, like you would hear from the classic train example. So it was like strong in my face and then trailed, like something was moving very fast past my face when it did it. And obviously my dog was like, whoa, and but was so wild, wilder than the who in my face of something male, was the smell. There was this waft on the air, like if somebody was running past you, there's like a wind, and it smelled like skunk and wet dog. I was like, no freaking way. That is exactly what it smells like. It smells like a mixture of skunk and wet dog with a hint of sweetness. And that sweetness was not unpleasant. And I remember thinking, like, you guys don't smell bad. Like, yeah, wet dog, yeah, no big deal. Skunk, smelled that before. And that sweetness was an interesting little mix in there. But that was also one of the last things that happened before the end of that season, if you will. And it stunned me so much that I didn't make the owl connection for, it was like a month later. Like, anytime these things happen, I'm a little bit stupefied. Like, I can't believe that really happened. Like, that really was a thing. And now I'm just in awe. And so I'll fast forward a little bit. This was, maybe like a month ago. I was thinking like, I haven't had any weird experiences, thank God. Like, I was like, because I was getting not scared, but like that trepidation of like, all right, I'm getting ready to move out here. The house is on the property. What's this going to be like? Like, am I going to have bangs on the house? Like, what's going to happen? But nothing was happening. There was, no high strangeness, no owl noises, no tree pushes, nothing moved, no, you get the picture. So I wasn't even thinking about my neighbors. And so I'm getting into my car, like in and out of my car, taking shovels out or something, and I hear, "Who?" from up in the woods by the cemetery, which is like, I want to say it's across the street, but we're talking like up the hill, so there's some distance to it. And it was a female. I was like, no way, I've never heard the female. That was really freaking cool. It sounded just like if a big woman was up in the woods, like goofing around and making a who sound, to to the point where my first thought in my head was, what is some lady doing? What's some lady doing up there on the land preserve? Like, that makes no sense.
I'm just trying to figure out what's going on with your land. There's something wild that is going on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So the latest thing, and I feel like I could be, reading into this, but again, it's like the totality of the circumstances. I've had other experiences with other of these Sasquatches that I've seen. So I haven't even told you all the ones that I've seen at this point. I'm not saying that it's a lot, but I had an experience where I saw one press its face to the window, not at my house. And then I had another experience at Mammoth Cave. I had another experience in Colorado. So at this point, we're talking, it's been like 3-4 years now. Now I'm getting more accustomed to it and able to fight down the fear. But so this happened, and now I have to wonder, like, oh, were they kind of helping me out there? So my car broke down a few days ago, and my dad left me his car. There's something going. The tires go flat fairly quick. So I'm working at night, and so having this car functioning before I go to bed was really, really important. And I just moved in my house a week ago, and so. I should also add, I'm having a hornet problem. So being out, I don't want to be moving around in the middle of the night around these hornets that are drawn to my headlamp. So I'm like, all right, what am I going to do with this car? My dad helps me find his pump. The point is there's a lot of preparation. I'm out in the driveway, I have the car doors open, and I'm like, oh, I got to get the battery for the pump. And so I come into the house, and I'm exhausted. It's time for me to go to bed, and I'm not thinking straight, and I forget. And so I go in, I make my sandwich, I let the dogs out. I'm about to bring the dogs in. They're out on the deck, and I can see through the kitchen window or through the living room windows that the dogs are fixated on something at the end of my driveway. And I hear, and I had always wondered what the Sasquatch bark is with my dogs, because with Kiva, it was like a man. For her, if a man was running by, like jogger, she had this very specific bark, and she did that. I knew one was coming, and I've got a really fantastic story about that in Tree Knots. I've got to tell you that one. But so in the back of my mind, I had wondered, well, what's going to be the Sasquatch bark with my dogs? So Kiva died. Sorry, a little bit of backstory. Kiva died, and I was scared to live out here without dog protection. And I got my first dog, and she was only 40 pounds. I got another dog. She's 60 pounds and 8 months old, this giant German Shepherd. And so anyway, I'm like, what's their Sasquatch bark going to sound like? Well, I think I heard it. So they're chuffing and barking, and I'm thinking there's somebody standing at the end of my driveway because they're fixated. And I'm like, what jerk is like looking at my window, trying to look at my windows from the driveway? And I walk out on my deck, and I could tell that, and you have a sense that there was just something there. It was totally still. The tree limbs were waving back and forth, probably to about 8 feet up into the air, as if something big just went from, the end of my driveway up into the woods. And but the thing is the dogs didn't do the deer bark or the bear bark or the dog bark. They did the person bark. And so, you don't think Sasquatch, you think there's a person there. But then I got thinking about the totality of the situation, which was, oh, wait a minute, there's a huge ditch on the other side of that road, and then the hillside goes straight up, and not straight up, but like those hard embankments that I would have to climb, hand over foot, or, like kids do, up the side of a hill. And it's like, there's just no way that was a person. I was like, and why would a bear do that? There's a game trail to the right and to the left. And so this is spinning through my head. And then while this is spinning through my head, I notice I left the car doors open, the light in the car is on, the two flat tires, and I was getting ready to pull the dogs into the house, and I just I told the dogs, I said, hey, they're okay. It's okay. The dogs stopped barking. I just waved and said, thank you so much. Took care of my car and went in. And I thought, I'm really glad I left them 3 Snickers up in the woods the day before. So yes, it could have been anything, but it's the totality of the circumstances. It's the coincidences. It's the, I have to just, I figure I'd rather thank my good neighbors than not thank them. And you know what I mean? Like, I'd rather be my imagination and I'm thanking them. I reached out with my mind and said, look, I will leave the curtains open for you. You can watch me when I'm sleeping. You can see through the windows that I'm cooking. You can, I'm okay with you watching me, but I just don't ever want to wake up in the middle of the night and look out the window and see a face staring at me. I'm not ready to see your face. And that's kind of where we're at. And like, maybe someday I will be ready to see them. But at this point, it seems like there's been great care not to scare me. And I don't want to be one of those people that my ego jumps in and say, like, I'm special or I have a message. I'm just living peacefully with something. And since that 2019 experience, I have had other paranormal experiences. I didn't even it's not just since 2019. It's been a lot of my life, but I just never recognized things in that way. Like, I used to work by Skinwalker Ranch, saw a lot of things out there. Had friends that had Sasquatch stories. It's just since about 2019, I've started just maybe recognizing things as, okay, with my science background, there's some things that I don't understand, that we don't understand yet, but I can try to understand. I can test. I can look for repeatability. It's if I reach out to something in the forest and there's nothing there, but I've lived a good life and feeling like I'm in harmony, then that's better than like not reaching out and just feeling like, oh, I guess trees fall all the time on my property. Like, I don't know. It's in some ways it's a choice, but there's a lot of things that have happened. So I'll give another example. This is one of my favorite stories, because when I tell people at like conferences and like Whitehall and stuff like that, I get blank stares back. It's like kind of, but yet I lived it. So this was back when I was hunting for property. This was after the experience where I saw one lean out from behind the tree. Now I'm on the west side of the Hudson. I'm happy sharing where. It was out by Clarksville, and there's a there's like a cave, to us cavers, it's well known, the Clarksville Cave, and the property right next to it was for sale. I wanted that property so badly to put a caving community, like Airbnb there. And at this point, I'd had several of these experiences with the forest friends that I knew, like, okay, this is cave area, there's a possibility that they could be here. So I took the afternoon, this is full pandemic mode. The realtor couldn't meet me out there. They just said, go on out there and take pictures. So I went out to take pictures and dig a test pit. And I, again, blissed out, taking photos. I finding plants I hadn't seen, honoring the cave that was there, planning the future, and there was no Sasquatch activity. And I thought, gosh, surely after that, I mean, I was like expecting something to peek out from behind a tree after just having that experience. So my nerves are calming down. I was like, oh, I've been out here for a few hours, nothing weird's happened. You know, silly Jenney and her imagination, like I can just like move on with my life. You know, those were like weird one-offs. So I'm at the end of the time there. And there's trail cameras everywhere because it's Clarksville Cave. There's trail cams. So I just stepped from the area where all the trail cams are facing toward Clarksville Cave onto what I'm sure is the property that I want to purchase. And I hear my dog Kiva at the car going, whoa, like she does when a man runs really fast past the car. And I thought, oh, that's funny. Like there's some guy down there, maybe, you know, but I thought I've been here all this time. It can't be a Sasquatch, right? Because they had ample time to reveal themselves. So kind of half chuckle and, you know, laughingly, I was like, okay, guys, I'm leaving now. If you're here, you're going to have to make yourselves known. And as the word known leaves my lips, I hear, it sounded exactly how people describe it. It sounded like a Louisville slugger breaking in half, but this Louisville slugger is like 8 inches thick. It was the loudest, craziest crack. And there were 3 of them, one right above my head, one on the other side of the little like field. It's like, you know, maybe 100 feet, and then another one about 100 feet behind that. So it was crack, crack, crack. And but that crack above my head was literally above my head. I thought that a tree branch was about to fall on my head. I thought that a giant tree branch had broken above my head. It was in the process of falling on me, and I jumped out of the way and like looking over my shoulder to the left at the same time. There was a tree there. It was only about 6 feet high because it probably broke off 100 years ago. It was like 100-year-old skeleton of a giant white pine, and the rest of the tree was laying on the ground. I was like, so there was nothing, there was no matter to percuss. I was like, what did I do? Like, go back in time to the moment that tree broke? Like, that's not a thing either. And it was so loud and so scary, and I like thought I was about to be crushed. I instantly had to pee. And I just said, you guys are going to do that to me, you're going to get mooned. And I dropped my pants. I had to pee really bad. And I just, but people say like that, like, or when I say people, I told you a little earlier about my friend Chris, and I've had many conversations with her, like trying to understand again, like, what was this, a bear? Was this a Sasquatch? Was this, you know, what was this? And what's great is this friend of mine who's, I would say, psychic. She's great about being like, nope, Jenney, that was a nothing burger. Like, that was nothing. And I was like, okay, that's cool. Like, it helps me like discern the feelings. So anyways, I've asked her, like, what is this about? Like, and she just says, well, they think you're hilarious. And I think that this is a theme that that I think the community could take a look at. So when I listen to these podcasts and I hear these stories from people, I don't think, oh, that was a scary story necessarily. I think, oh, that Sasquatch is having a great time messing with that person. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
like they're
they're
having a great time at our expense. And I think they leave tracks to taunt people. I think they're just like, oh, you know what would be really funny? one track in a mud puddle. Right? Or like, you know what would be really funny? Would be like make this silly thing out of sticks and just leave it in the woods and sit and watch people like stop and look at it. Or, oh, let's toss pebbles at them. So for me, that through all of these experiences, I look as like, oh, ha ha ha, like you guys are having a good time. And then I will like do something funny in return. So like when I got hit with the walnut, I was like, okay, fine. You're going to throw something with a funny pattern at me. I'm going to throw back a piece of candy with a funny pattern on it. And it's peppermint. It's probably too strong a taste. You know what I mean? It's going to be like a, I don't know, maybe not delicious. That's
right. It's not a Snickers bar. So, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. So obviously that's not going to be the case with everybody, but I'm just saying that has been my experience. So, and I had been in I left, one of my first stories with them, I left on a different podcast. I don't know if you want me to say it out loud,
no,
but
go ahead.
It was Brian King Sharp's,
yeah, totally.
Love that podcast. You know, Brian, Tiffany, Wayne, all the folks associated with that, those productions. And so it was like this 3-day adventure where something pursued us in the forest. And ultimately, I believe now I got hit with infrasound, and I got to experience that like instant, like the bowels are moving, you got to pee. And so that's kind of like, what is more fun to Sasquatch, right? To then like see a bunch of people and all of a sudden make them feel sick and pee. Yeah, I don't know. Like you gotta kind of think of it from their perspective. Like I think they just love messing with us. Like,
I think there might be. I think you definitely might be onto something there. That there's there's definitely an entertainment factor. We know that it's got to be. I mean, I feel like, there's an entertainment factor. The way that they watch us and stuff, there's definitely something there.
And like with the like with the owl thing, like I asked him to sound like an owl. So what does he do? He runs up and he goes, who, like right in my face. Because I said, like, because it won't be as scary. So what he does is he does something that's terrifying.
There
like,
you go.
You asked for this, lady. Like, you're the one who asked for it. Like, I'm sure it was hilarious to them. And, or to the homeless people living in my woods. Like, what is the alternative? I have homeless people living in my woods. And, I can't quite see. And that my dog, like, allows, it starts getting, weirder and weirder. And I do want to note is I have encountered feral people. I think maybe I have encountered feral people before in the forest, and I have encountered like I worked in North Georgia for years. I mentioned this on Brian's podcast. Like I did encounter students when I worked at the wilderness program report seeing a man in the bushes. Another time, someone came as, like I went by the name GI there, and the GI, there's somebody with a red headlamp staring at me while I'm peeing, and then my dog tracks something up into the forest. So whether that's a person or something else, there's definitely, people in the forest. I can tell you that. I lived up on Mount Hood for years, and that's where I saw somebody just, like this person looked so feral, and they just walked in front of my van in the middle of the night. And it was freaky, like it was no headlamp on, just like walking through the forest. Like they knew every rock, every, I don't know. It was, anyway, I've seen that. And, I've come across shelters in the forest that I believe were clearly people. And I knew a guy, he just lived up in a cave up in Little Cottonwood Canyon for the winter. I worked with this guy up at Brighton. So people do live in unusual circumstances.
Oh,
And I think
absolutely.
that's important to mention. So, you know, my family, I think, is of the impression of like, yeah, we just really hope it's not homeless people, homeless people living in your woods messing with
They'd
you.
rather have it be
And
Bigfoot. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And right. And so I have two dogs, one very large one. Anyway, so I was rambling on, but so that experience with the crack of the tree, I'll call them tree knocks. I don't know other way to put it, but I have said to people before, like quote unquote researchers, I was like, look, I experienced one right above my head. I'm telling you, I could not see what made it. There was no matter to percuss. There was no stick. There was nothing. And there were two more that followed. So it was like, you don't believe one, maybe you don't believe two, we'll give you three. And you know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, and I get blank stares. So there's definitely high strangeness that we still could look at as data, right? So what I'm talking about is repeatability. So sure, I'm walking through the woods, I hear a crack that sounds like a tree break. I have been in the woods as a wilderness guide and almost been killed by trees that, branches that randomly fall in the forest, trees that fall, lightning strikes, all that stuff. It does truly happen. How many times does it happen when you say, hey guys, I'm about to leave, if you want to make yourselves known, you got to do it now. Like,
yeah, that's too much of a coincidence. Level. Yeah. Jenney, I think I would definitely love you to come back for a part 2, because I've made a list here of topics that we haven't even, I mean, you were mentioning Skinwalker Ranch and Mount Hood and North Georgia. And I mean, I think I would love to have you back. But this has been absolutely incredible.
I'm glad you had fun. I do enjoy talking to you. I feel really, at home. I realize I'm a rambler. I'm a talker, and I had step-by-step notes, which I got lost in my brain and set down a long time ago. I would love to come back. I had entered into this conversation thinking that maybe we would even discuss more about the science. I can answer a lot of like genetic questions and, like talk about the science of things. Yeah, I'd love to come back. And obviously the experiences here, I don't think are just going to stop.
No, I don't think they are.
Yeah. And I haven't even gotten into, since I'm careful who I share the experiences with, because some of my friends who I've shared things with now have had what you call them, like confirmations. And I would love to talk for another time, but about the one I saw press his face to the window. That one looked like a caveman, more like what I hear Fred up in Alaska describe.
Yep.
That was another one of those crazy stories that happened during my meditation group. And then obviously I saw the individual over by East Greenbush. I saw that one. I've seen him one last time, also around that meditation group. And then I mentioned earlier, I'm also happy to do hypnosis for somebody that has had an experience that they want to derive more information from. And you can cut that out if you want, but I'm just,
sure.
I'm just putting that out there. It's obviously there's a state involved with some of my experiences, and I'm open to those being hallucinatory because I understand how those neurotransmitters work. But like I said, I think as a community, what we need to do with the high strangeness is test it for repeatability. and accept that, yep, some of this could be in our head, but if it's testable and repeatable, we need to look at it as a data point and try to understand it. And I guess my final word on this is, yeah, I'm a scientist, a chemist, biologist, deep into the science. And when the Venn diagram starts overlapping with things I can't explain, I don't believe the answer is to reject it. I believe the answer is to test it. And that's where I'm at.
I think that's a perfect way to kind of sum up what we've been talking about today. And thank you for coming on, Jenney. And we'll definitely be in touch to set up a second time. But thank you.
Thanks, Jeremiah. I hope you have a wonderful night.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.